So this is the real philosophical shock of the Yongshian skull. If our lineage stretches back over 1 million years, that's 1 million years of migrations, 1 million years of tools, 1 million years of knowledge passed down through generations, 1 million years of traditions, experiments, failures, successes, and forgotten breakthroughs, 1 million years of populations rising and then disappearing without a trace, 1 million years of cultures, lives, stories, families, adventures, whole societies that have been completely forgotten. And when you consider that the entirety of recorded human history, everything you've ever read about history, right back to the earliest dawn of human civilization, is only, apparently, 6,000 years ago. 1 million years starts to look like an awfully long time. And we may have lost so much because the earth is brutal to the archaeological record. Coastlines shift, floodplains erase, ice sheets scrape continents clean, deserts entomb, volcanoes reset, forests decay, cosmic impacts wipe the slate clean, and only a tiny percentage of ancient material survives. A million-year-old lineage invites the possibility, not fantasy, not fringe, but basic logic, that we are missing vast chapters of our own past. Not necessarily advanced civilizations, but lineages, cultures, expansions, collapses, and innovations, and potentially civilizations that left almost nothing behind. A deeper human timeline is not an indulgence, it's a framework that fits the evidence far better than the rigid models of the last century, models that academia still clings to. And once you accept these possibilities, you immediately begin to acquire a new lens through which to view certain archaeological sites. And suddenly, places that used to look like outliers start to look more plausible. Some of the most controversial and quietly revolutionary discoveries in human origins research are not hidden in deep caves or locked in obscure journals. They're sitting in plain sight. And we've been interpreting them through a timeline that is now clearly too tight. So I'm now going to go through some of the best evidence to display human sophistication in deep time. And I want you to bear in mind that these are the few sites that have almost impossibly survived. And then I want you to think, if these made it, how many equivalent achievements didn't? There is some genuinely stunning evidence of sophistication deep in prehistory. Evidence that shouldn't exist if the old story was true. Remember, the mainstream once existed that we only became truly intelligent around 50,000 years ago, and only settled down and lived in permanent communities around 10,000 years ago with the Neolithic Revolution. But the evidence keeps disagreeing. Take Colombo Falls. Nearly 500,000 years ago, hominins there built a joined wooden structure. 2 massive logs deliberately shaped and notched so they interlocked. To do that, you need planning, you need foresight, and the ability to imagine a structure before it exists. It's construction, and it pushes organized engineering back hundreds of thousands of years. Because whoever it was understood joinery. They could plan ahead. They could manipulate material for structural ends. And it was part of a tradition of woodworking that clearly didn't begin with this one structure. Nothing appears in the archaeological record fully formed. You're looking at a tail end of a long line of knowledge. This discovery alone forces a major rethink. But in the context of potentially 1 million years of intelligence, Colombo stops being so astonishing and kind of becomes expected. If humans or human-like ancestors did have modern cognitive architecture that early, then 500,000 years of lost structural experimentation is not just plausible, it's pretty likely. And this site also suggests that humans may not have been nomadic. You don't build a complicated structure if you're going to leave the next day. It, along with all these sites I'm about to mention, suggests humans may have lived in settled communities literally hundreds of thousands of years earlier than the Neolithic Revolution, where conventional archaeology still insists that this began. But there's others. At Bilzingsleben, roughly 400,000 years old, archaeologists uncovered circular arrangements of stone and bone, post holes, evidence of a structure. Whatever it was, a dwelling, a workshop, a meeting space, it was a structure. It required spatial planning and shared understanding of how to build, and community-level organization. Then there's Terra Amata, also about 400,000 years old. Here we find traces of oval huts with structured floors, designated hearths, and organized activity zones. These weren't temporary windbreaks thrown together by nomadic wanderers. They were planned shelters built at a specific place, used repeatedly with space divided for different tasks. But almost twice as old as that, at Gesher Yaakov in Israel, from 780,000 years ago, we see behavior that looks astonishingly modern. Hominins there didn't just survive, they organized their entire living space. Archaeologists found clear, repeated activity zones, one area for toolmaking, another for processing plants, another for cracking nuts, another for controlled fire. This isn't random scatter, it's a mapped out campsite, reused over and over again for thousands of years, with each space dedicated and specifically used for these specific tasks. But here's the key. There's no evidence of structures at Gesher Yaakov, but it sits in a completely exposed environment. There is no natural shelter nearby. So how did they survive? How did they continuously live there all year round? Well, they must have built structures, and they've simply decayed. But even older than that is Olduvai Gorge, which is almost 2 million years old. And this shows patterned behavior. Again, stone tools napped in one area, bones processed in another, and evidence of repeated return to the same spots. It's not just a campsite, it's a structured landscape of activity created by minds organizing their world. Archaeologist Mary Leakey said that she found a stone circle here, an almost astoundingly old example of humans potentially building. Now, this is controversial, but it could be evidence of humans engineering, of humans building some form of home almost 2 million years ago. All of this points to a mind far older and far more capable and far more complex than we were ever taught. A mind that could plan ahead, that could modify its environment and build a shared vision long before civilization began. And remember, these are just the few that impossibly survived the decay. And in my view, the presence of these structures so deep in time suggests there could have been many, 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 many more. Now we turn to the ocean and to the mystery that should have collapsed the cognitive revolution model long before it did. The presence of humans on islands they could not have reached without boats. There are 3 islands that were settled by humans that all required a crossing over deep ocean channels, over the famous Wallace Line. The key examples you can see here are Flores. Stone tools and hominins on Flores go back at least 800,000 years, possibly 1 million, but there were no land bridges. This requires a water crossing, over 100 kilometers across. In Luzon, in the Philippines, butchered animal bones and stone tools dating back 700,000 years show that some human ancestor also crossed deep channels. And at Sulawesi, a few months ago, archaeologists announced tools that date back over 1 million years, and this too required some form of water crossing. Now, for decades, the explanation for this was always the same. It was an accident. They drifted across on vegetation mats. And when we only knew about Flores, this kind of made sense. Maybe there was like some huge storm and some humans got thrown out to sea and somehow survived. But then we discovered the humans on Luzon, and it made a little bit less sense. And then we discovered the humans on Sulawesi, and it made even less sense still, because what are the chances of a group of humans, crucially, a group of humans large enough to become a breeding population, being swept out to sea, surviving for weeks or months under the blazing tropical sun with nothing to drink, and eventually being washed up on an island 100 kilometers away with a large enough number of people to populate the island and survive for hundreds of thousands of years? I mean, yes, okay, maybe once, flukes do happen, but twice or 3 times, all in the same area, at what point does coincidence start to look like behavior? So if this is true, this is not the behavior of a species whose cognitive abilities appear late. This is the behavior of a lineage that's had an intelligence deep in its ancestry. So if humans or proto-humans already had advanced cognitive features 1 million years ago, then the early water crossings are not really surprising at all. It's the logical expression of a mind that could shape wood, as at Colombo Falls, plan multi-day activities, as at Gesher Yaakov, cooperate in groups, as at Terra Amata, and adapt to landscapes with creativity rather than instinct. This is a mind that experiments, this is a mind that explores, a mind that tries things and gets better over generations. In that context, crossing to Flores or Luzon is not a miracle, it's an inevitability.